Good afternoon. Got us a little picture of the Keystone Dam in the background and some lovely path rocks here. Oh, there's a bird. All right, here we go. Chapter 4. As the 18th century science of race developed in Europe, influential scholars referred to two kinds of slavery in their anthropological works. Nearly always those associated with brute labor, Africans, and Tartars primarily emerged as ugly, while the luxury slaves, those valued for sex and gendered as female, the Circassians, Georgians, and Caucasians of the Black Sea region, came to figure as epitomes of human beauty. There we go. By the 19th century, odalisques, or white slave women, often appear young, naked, beautiful, and sexually available throughout Europe and American art. The odalisque still plays her role as the nude in art history, though her part in the scientific history of white race has largely been forgotten. Needless to say, this early scholarship was ethnographically imprecise, pairing as it did Africans with Tartars, increasingly termed Kalmucks, on the ugly side, but clearly figuring some as ugly and some as beautiful seemed much more important than ethnographical consistency. We got this. The relationship between slavery and racial classification brings the beauty ideal squarely into the history of whiteness. Note the earliest known human classification scheme, Nouvelle Division de la Terre par las différentes espèces à races que la habitent. A new division of the earth and the different species or races living there was originally published anonymously in April of 1684 in the journal des... Hang on, I can't see because the sun is bad. Deep in the heart of Texas. Okay, Scavens. There it is. Try to put it all together. Hang on. It was published anonymously in April 1684 in the journal des Scavans. Scavans. In case someone's wanted to look that up. The Journal of the Académie Royale des Sciences in Paris. The author turned out to be Francois Bernier from 1625 through 88, a French traveler and personal physician to the last important Mughal Persian emperor of India. Bernier put forward an idiosyncratic taxonomy, one keying on 4 geographical divisions. It was really no odder than the thousands of other racial schemes to follow. As usual in Western literature, Bernier's 4 races give pride of place to Europe and extend over a vast area, including North Africa and Asia, as far away as Thailand and Indonesia. For some reason, a part of Muscovy, like the area around Moscow, is excluded. More oddly, American Indians belong to Bernier's first, mostly European species. In the second species are people in sub-Saharan Africa, and in the third are those in Muscovy, part of Southeast Asia, China, and the vast lands between China and Russia, including Tartars, all around the Fertile Crescent and into the Levant. Georgians, Muscovites, Tartars, Uzbeks, and Turkomans all belong to the third species, Alone in the fourth species are the Lapps. Race theoreticians stumbled continually over what to do with the Lapps. Lapps. I think I'm probably gonna like them. Wonder what their problem was. Why such a weird configuration? At least part of Bernier's answer seems to lie in physical appearance, in skin color. The third people, Asians, are, quote, truly white, but they have broad shoulders, a flat face, a small squab nose, little pig's eyes, long and deep set, and 3 hairs of a beard, unquote. And then he then says, also quoting him, the Lapps are little stunted creatures with thick legs, large shoulders, short neck, and a face elongated immensely, very ugly, and partaking much of the bear, as in B-E-A-R. I don't even know what that means. Partaking much of the bear. Anyway, we're going to continue. Veering off towards sexual desire, Bernier dedicates more than half his paper to the relative beauty of women, employing phrases that become commonplace and ideas fated for oblivion. Showing a certain relativism, Bernier admits that each people will have its hierarchy of beautiful and ugly women, but he insists some people really are better looking than others. And then here's what he wrote. You have heard so much said already of the beauty of the Greeks, he says, and the Levantines and all the travelers. Agree that the handsomest women of the world are to be found among the immense quality of slaves who come to them from Mingrelia, Georgia, and Circassia. Nothing beyond the commonplace so far. But Bernier continues speaking. He says only for himself. I have never seen anything more beautiful than the naked black slave girls for sale at Mocha in the Indian island off the coast of East Africa. Okay, hang on, there's a little... No, I'm not going to read that because it doesn't make sense. Alright, while Bernier's paper appeared in a prestigious journal and laid a lot of groundwork, its brevity soon consigned to its history's footnotes. A longer travel account by Jean Chardin, appearing 5 years later, gained much wider circulation. Its depiction of the beautiful white slave echoes through the ages. Okay, this is saying, this Jean Chardin is not to be confused with the French still life and genre painter Jean-Baptiste Simon Chardin from 1699 through 1779. The painter Chardin influenced 19th and 20th century Impressionist painters such as Vincent van Gogh, Paul Cézanne, Henri Matisse, and the Cubist Georges Braque. Okay, so now we're going to roll into Jean-Baptiste Chardin from 1643 through 1713, also known as Sir John Chardin, a French Protestant, a Huguenot, whose family were jewelers to the court of Louis traveled routinely to Persia and India in the 1670s and 1680s, seeking rare baubles for the French royal household. His 2-volume account, Journal du Voyage du Chevalier Chardin in, oh my word, whatever. It's really long. It just keeps going. Oh wait, here's it in English. The Travels of Sir John Chardin into Persia and the East Indies. Looks like it was written about 1689. Somebody wants to read that. describes a trip that deviated from his usual route, preventing his going via Venice through Constantinople to Asia Minor. Local disputes rerouted Chardin north of Constantinople through the wilds of the Caucasus, today's Chechnya, and Georgia. In the 17th century, this was untamed country, according to Chardin, the lands of people without religion and without police. A scientist at heart, he took meticulous notes while racked by constant fear. Chardin loathed this chaotic Black Sea region where brigands controlled the highways, often threatening his goods, his freedom, and his life. As he says of the Circassians, Chardin uses the Turkish form, which is Cherkes of Circassia. It is impossible for them to glimpse any opportunity for thievery without taking advantage of it. They eat with their hands, go to the bathroom right next to where they eat, and then continue eating without washing. Chardin is totally disgusted. The habits of the Mingrelians, which is Caucasian people on the northeast coast of the Black Sea, are vile. They, here's another quote, and their neighbors are huge drunkards, worse than the Germans and all the northern Europeans when it comes to drink. Not only do Mingrelians consider assassination, murder, and incest as admirable traits, they steal each other's wives without compunction. The women are not much better. They wear too much makeup, and their bodily stench overcomes whatever amorous intentions their appearance might have inspired. These people are complete savages, Chardin rails. They used to be Christians, but now they have no religion at all. They live in wooden cabins and go around practically naked. The only people who go there are slave traders. The hugely profitable slave trade powered the Black Sea economy. Turks made the money, but Mingrelians supplied the goods. Chardin deplores Mingrelians' unbelievable inhumanity, their cruelty toward their compatriots, and even people of their own blood. They sell their wives and children, kidnap the children of their neighbors, and do the same thing. They even sell their own children, their wives, and their mothers. Chardin was appalled to find these miserable creatures were not beaten down. They seemed not to feel the tragedy of their condition. Knowing their value as slaves, women are erotically adept and entirely shameless when it comes to the language of love. And a precise value it is, too. The cargo of Chardin's Black Sea vessel, sold according to an erotic price scale. Pretty girls, aged 13 to 18, went for 20 crowns. Chardin gives the price in ekas, which is crowns, which was worth about 3 pounds silver each. Thus, pretty young girls and livestock cost about the same per head. All right. Precise value it is too. The cargo of the Chardin's Black Sea vessel sold according to an erotic price scale. Pretty girls aged 13 to 18 went for 20 crowns. Plainer girls for less. Women went for 12 crowns. Children for 3 or 4. Men aged 25 to 40 sold for 15 crowns. Those older girls for only 8 or 10. A Greek merchant whose room was near Chardin bought a woman and her baby at the breast for 12 crowns. Looks like this is a little writing about them. The woman was 25 years old, with a smooth, even, lily-white complexion and admirably beautiful features. I have never before seen such beautifully rounded breasts. The beautiful woman inspired overall sensations of desire and compassion. And the next, this particular scene was destined for greatness, but Chardin found other lovely faces and figures among the people of the Caucasian mountains, and especially in Georgia. Here's another writing. Okay, here we go. The blood of Georgia is the most beautiful in the Orient, and I would have to say in the world, for I've never noticed an ugly face of either sex in this country, and some are downright angelic. Nature has endowed most of the women with graces not to be seen in any other place. I have to say it is impossible to look at them without falling in love with them. No more charming faces and no more lovely figures than those of the Georgians could serve to inspire painters. They are tall, graceful, slender, and poised, and even though they don't wear many clothes, you never see bulges. The only thing that spoils them is that they wear makeup, and the prettier they are, the more makeup they wear, for they think of makeup as a kind of ornament. And that was the end of that. The enduring legend of beautiful white slave women, Circassians, Georgians, Caucasians, dates from Chardin's 17th century. There's a figure here called the young Georgian girl, and then the Ossetian girl. We'll get there in a minute. However, a 20th century photo of Georgians shows them as fairly ordinary looking people. And then here's another figure, Georgians in Tbilisi. In fairly short order, Chardin's unflattering description of squalid and smelly Caucasians would fade from race theory, but his image of the powerless, young, disrobed female slave on the Black Sea acquired eugenical power. So well received was the work as a whole that the travels of Sir John Chardin into Persia and the East Indies from 1673 through 1677 gained its authorship membership in the newly founded Royal Society of London. Alright, and a little note at the bottom. The great European scholarly societies were a product of the 17th century, with the Royal Society of London, founded in 1660, the most prestigious of all, the Parisian Académie Royale des Sciences, founded in 1666, and the Berlin Académie des Wissenschaften, founded in 1700. However, women were not admitted to these gatekeepers of knowledge until the mid-20th century. To the Royal Society in 1945, the Berlin Académie des Wissenschaften in 1949, and the Académie des Sciences in 1979. Women were long the subjects of scientific knowledge, but not acknowledged as creators of knowledge. Okay, so here's the picture that we were talking about in the last one. Okay, so there's the first one. And then over here. Okay, there we go. Now we're back. Okay. Within 50 years, Chardin's erotic figure had invaded Western art, whose preferred term, odalisque, derives from the Turkish odalk, meaning harem, room. Georgian, Circassian, and Caucasian were interchangeable names for the figure. Each term refers to young white slave women, and each carries with it the aura of physical attractiveness, submission, and sexual availability. In a word, femininity. She cannot be free, for her captive status and harem location lie at the core of her identity. Along with a number of others, the philosopher Immanuel Kant, from 1724 through 1804, picked up this theme. Living in northeastern Germany, now part of Poland, Kant put forward his own ideas of race in Beobachtungen über die Observations on the Feelings of the Beautiful and Sublime, from 1763. Here, Kant actually attacks the idea that standards of human beauty may differ by culture. Beauty ideals are universal, he maintains, for the sort of beauty we have called the pretty figure is judged by all men very much alike. Cueing on Chardin, Kant agrees that Circassian and Georgian maidens have always been considered extremely pretty by all Europeans who travel through their lands, as well as by Turks, Arabs, Persians. He even picks up Chardin's statement that Persians beautify their offspring through connection with slave women, and deplores the fact that great fortunes could arise from a wicked commerce in such beautiful creatures, sold to self-indulgent rich men. Excuse me. Only one ambivalence appears in Kant's analysis. Progeny of such unethical unions often turned out to be beautiful, and clearly, Kant concludes, Turks, Arabs, and Persians, Kant lumps them together in ugliness, could use a lot of genetic help. Next to Wei In was one of Kant's youngest East Prussian colleagues, the philosopher John Gottfried von Herder, from 1744 to 1803, who remains almost as influential. Although remembered for questioning the idea of an unchanging, universal human nature, Herden's Ideas for the Philosophy of History of Humanity, from 1784 through 91, carries on by connecting servitude, beauty, and the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea region, this center of beautiful forms. Like Kant's treatise, Herder's text, when translated into English, echoes Chardin, but changing Chardin's Persians into Turks and spelling with a lowercase t. The Turks, originally a hideous race. Okay, this is what he wrote. Kant's other guy named Herder. They translated it to English. The Turks, with the tiny t, originally a hideous race, improved their appearance and rendered themselves more agreeable when handsomer nations became servants to them. In taking note of slavery's alteration of a host society's personal appearances, Chardin mentions a demographic role that upper-class Europeans and Americans seldom recognized at home. By early in the 19th century, these iconic notions of beauty and its whereabouts had moved steadily westward, across France, and over the English Channel into British literature. In Travels in Various Countries of Europe, Asia, and Africa, from 1810, the prolific traveler, Edward Daniel Clarke, from 1769 through 1822, considers the notion of Circassian beauty as established truth. The contrast between handsome Circassians and ugly Tartars appears prominently in Clark's narrative. Here's an example of that. Beauty of features and of form, for which the Circassians have long been celebrated, is certainly prevalent among them. Their noses are aquiline, their eyebrows arched and regular, their mouths small, their teeth remarkably white, and their ears not so large nor so prominent as those of Tartars. Although from wearing the head shaven they appear to disadvantage according to our European notions of beauty. And once again, Circassian beauty resides in the enslaved. Their women, here he's quoting again, their women are the most beautiful perhaps in the world, of enchanting perfection of features and very delicate complexions. The females that we saw were all of them the accidental captives of war, who had been carried off together with their families. They were, however, remarkably handsome. Alrighty. Also in play were military rivalries that broke out around the Black Sea region, putting the Russian and Ottoman empires against each other. Pitting. During Greece's war for independence in the 1820s, and then during the Crimea War in the 1850s. The Crimea War is the Ukraine peninsula between the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. The Crimean War drew worldwide attention to white slavery. Both hostilities brought white slavery increased attention in the West, especially once word spread that Turkish slave dealers were flooding the market with Circassian women slaves before the Russians cut off the supply. Even Americans followed the Crimean War closely, picking up European cultural enthrallment with the beautiful Circassian slave girl. This was only natural given the American slave system, with its fascination for beautiful, light-skinned female slaves, and growing sectional tensions as exemplified in the figure of Eliza in Harriet Beecher Stowe's best-selling Uncle Tom's Cabin from 1851 to 52. All right. The New York impresario P.T. Barnum, never one to ignore a commercial opportunity, took note of this purported glut of white slaves, and in 1864, as the Civil War raged, directed his European agent to find a beautiful Circassian girl, or girls to exhibit in Barnum's New York Museum on Broadway as, quote, the purest example of the white race, unquote. In the American context, a notion of racial purity had clearly gotten mixed up with physical beauty. Barnum cared a lot less about ethnicity than about how his girls looked, advising his agent that they must be pretty and will pass for Circassian slaves. Barnum's Circassian slave girls all had white skin and very frizzy hair, giving them the appearance of light-skinned Negroes. This combination reconciled conflicting American notions of beauty, that is, whiteness, and slavery, that is, Negro. In light of this figure's departure from straight-haired European conceptions of Circassian slave girls, it was probably for the better that Barnum never imported the real thing. In truth, few in the United States knew what a Circassian beauty would actually look like. But by the late 1890s, Barnum's formulation had gelled sufficiently for Americans that the idly doodling artist Winslow Homer. Okay, so here's Winslow Homer's drawing. I'm gonna mess this up again. Okay, so that was with him. More information that we need. That captured her essence of a white skin and Negro hair. The durable notion of Circassian beauty invaded even the classic 11th edition, which is 1910 through 11, of the Encyclopedia Britannica, which fulsomely praised Circassians as the loveliest of the lovely. In the patriarchal simplicity of their manners, the mental qualities with which they were endowed, the beauty of form and regularity of feature by which they were distinguished, they surpassed most of the other tribes of the Caucasus. An intriguing disjunction dogs this literary metaphor. Few images existed of actual people, whether in photographs, in paintings, or in the works of anthropologists. Such a deficit left 19th century artists of the odalisque dependent on four sources: the 18th century tradition of erotic art, all those sexually titillating scenes invented for aristocratic patrons, Napoleon's time in Egypt from 1798 to 1801, which yielded a bounty of plundered objects and triggered a harvest of scholarly books, the early 19th century French conquest of Algeria, which opened a window into the Ottomans and the Italian career of one of France's greatest painters, Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres, 1780 through 1867. A wildly successful French painter, when the French dominated Western fine art, began his career in Italy, a country rife with Eastern influences. His odalisques, epitomes of luxe et volupté, lounge languidly amid the splendor of the Turkish harem. They look like the girl next door, always so white-skinned that they could be taken for French. The result was a sort of soft pornography, a naked young woman, fair game for fine art, voyeurs. Witness, Grand Odalisque from 1814. An early Ingres work painted in Rome, which established his reputation. There'll be a figure over here in a sec. Typical of the Oriental list genre, Grand Odalisques depicts an indolent, sumptuously undressed, white-skinned young woman with Western European features. Her long back to the viewer, she looks over an ivory shoulder with a come-hither glance. Sounds like we need to say those. Okay. I think it was kind of blurry, so if you're more curious, you can look it up today. So, all right. Grand Odalisque portrays the subject by herself, surrounded by heavy ornamental drapery. But many other works feature a spacious harem full of beautiful young white women. Even when Odalisque does not figure in the title, characteristic scenery and personnel designate the scene as the Ottoman harem and the naked white woman as a slave. Now and then, black characters appear as eunuchs or sister slaves. Something called La Bain Turk from 1863, painted when Angres was 83 years old, displays a riot of voluptuous white nudes and one black one lounging about the bath and enjoying a languid music pastime. And there's the other figure for that. American art was not far behind. The country's most popular piece of 19th century sculpture was the Greek slave from 1846 by Hiram Powers, 1805 through 73. Larger than life and sculpted from white marble, it depicts a young white slave woman wearing only chains across her wrists and thighs. It's titled The Greek Slave by Powers, if you want to look that one up. Granted, Powers' title makes the young woman Greek, not Georgian, Circassian, or Caucasian, and a cross within the drapery makes her Christian rather than Muslim. But even so, the Greek slave demonstrates Orientalist whiteness in its material. The white Italian marble, so critical to notions of Greek beauty. When this monumental piece toured the United States in 1847 and 48, young men, unused to viewing a naked female, all but swooned before it. To be sure, the Greek slave was no ordinary naked woman. Powers deemed his sculpture historical. The image of a Greek maiden captured by Turkish soldiers during their Greek War for Independence. Only a few abolitionists drew connections between Powers' white slave and the white-skinned slaves of the American South, where no measure of beauty or whiteness or youth sufficed to deliver a person of African ancestry from bondage. Back in France, the odalisque retained her allure. The popular and prolific painter Jean-Léon Gérôme, from 1824 through 1904, occupied the visual art summit. As a teacher at the Académie des Beaux-Arts in Paris, and frequent contributor to the Academy's influential annual salon, his excuse me, I'm going to say it looks like a painting. His slave market from 1867 replaces the usual harem with another characteristic Orientalist location. Standing before us is a beautiful white slave girl stripped for examination by buyers. Once again, a black figure here, an official in the market, reinforces the painting's exotic exotic and erotic character. Not until well into the 20th century did the genre lose its attraction, as colonial populations began pressing for independence following the First World War. Oblivious to anti-colonialist rumblings, Henry Matisse, 1869 to 1954, painted a score of odalisques in the 1920s, some of the last non-ironic odalisques in art history. And there's some figures by Henry Matisse. It's called odalisque with red culottes. And culottes is spelled C-U-L-O-T-T-E-S. Wow. That word is a trigger. Hang on just a second. I'm going to get a drink, take some deep breaths. I had to wear culottes. Oh my Lord. I got to swim in the ocean in them. Jean culottes. Alright, back to task here. I'll admit I probably needed a mental break there just for... Okay, here we go. Where culture goes, there goes critical theory. Thus, in the late 20th century, a new field of cultural studies called Orientalism began to explore Western fascination with the exotic East and the feminization of Muslim peoples. Although this new Orientalism squared off against the voyeurism and stereotypes of the 19th century Western Orientalism, it remained in the thrall of Jerome's overpowering white slave iconography. Book jackets on two classic texts, the Field's foundational work, Edward Said's Orientalism from 1978, and Annie McClintock's Imperial Leather from 1995, both feature details from paintings by Jerome. Kingdoms dampened slavery there. This doesn't put on. Yeah. Almost lost the whole page there. Hang on. Okay, by Jerome Said's jacket does depart from the usual female odalisque to show a naked slave boy. There's a picture over here on the jacket of Orientalism, his book. McClintock stays with a detail from one of Jerome's harem bath scenes. And over here, hers is the imperial leather jacket. Here, we see more white female nakedness, black figures, and interior settings, all hallmarks of the odalisque. Yet despite the white slavery iconography of their covers, the content of neither book dwells on white slavery. Late 20th century American scholars seemed unable to escape Jerome or confront slavery that was not quintessentially black. Today's Orientalism no longer caters to Europeans and Americans who might gaze lustily at naked white women. Scholars have rediscovered commentary from Ottomans quite able to speak for themselves, such as Zeynep Ham's, looks like it's going to be a book, A Turkish Woman's European Impressions, whose letters subject the West to scrutiny, and Melik Ham's Abdul Hamid's Daughter, The Harem as Seen from Inside, both published in 1913. Furthermore, in 2005, an international coalition of individuals and organizations set up a Circassian World website to strengthen Circassian national identity and to teach about its past. The website includes photographs of Circassians, otherwise still hard to find. That slavery still exists in the present day is chronicled in works such as Kevin Bale's Disposable People, New Slavery in the Global Economy from 1999, Understanding Global Slavery from 2005, and Ending Slavery, How We Free Today's Slaves from 2007. The odalisque has not disappeared entirely. However, as 21st century artists use Orientalist iconography ironically, in 2005, the American artist Ellen Gallagher created one example in which she arranges herself as one of Matisse's odalisques from the 1920s and places Sigmund Freud in front of her with a sketch pad. Nowadays, both the reality of harem white slavery and the figure of the odalisque have largely disappeared, gone in the way of that slavery itself. Just as the Norman conquest of England's small kingdoms dampened slavery there, so European and Turkish imperial power closed down long-range slaving out of the Black Sea region. Okay, hang on, I'm going to read that again, because just as the Norman conquest of England's small kingdoms dampened slavery there, so European and Turkish imperial power closed down long-range slaving out of the Black Sea region. In the West, an abolitionist movement ended the Atlantic slave trade by the mid-19th century. In the East, around the same time, Russia abolished slavery and severely curtailed the Eastern European and Caucasian slave trade. As this slavery faded, so did its iconography, but ideals of white beauty endured. They had become firmly embedded in the science of race. I've been reading to you Neil Irvin Painter's book. Thank you for being with me. I appreciate you. That's been chapter 4. We'll continue with chapter 5. Got a few pictures. Let me see how long it looks. Not that long. It's very short, actually. Thank you for being with me.